States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor Scott Tremblay. Let the record know that Mayor Scott Tremblay is absent from tonight's meeting. Vice Mayor William Dittmer. Councilwoman Jenny Sorrell. Councilman Todd McClary.
Here.
Councilman Tom Kinsella.
Here.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager John Dude.
Here.
We have nobody signed up for comments for today. We'll go ahead and I would like to comment somewhere at the end in case you're going to cover something like that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, what you have in front of you this evening is the staff request for expenditures in the 2022 budget to be funded through Penny for Pasco. Page 3 has a listing of those, as well as the rolling forward budget. And Chief Robinson is here to discuss police vehicles and that kind of thing. My understanding is Chief Paul Castro will be on his way, or Captain Quinn as he walks as we speak. And so if you have questions specifically about the items that are listed, staff would be glad to answer those. Ultimately, once you've decided what you are interested in approving in the budget, once that's approved, then we can move forward with that. So I wanted to take the budget process in small bites, and so this is bite number 1. Anything to add, Rachel? Very good, thank you. Stand for your questions, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yes, there's a 5-year lifespan on each vest, so we're trying to budget it. That's correct.
Are we going into the individual items of business? Okay. Do you want to?
So, Mr. McClary, any
I
comments?
have no comments, but I will have questions when we get to the agenda.
Okay, and we'll go ahead and proceed to the agenda. And I'll turn that over to Mr. Duke for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Page 3 has the list of police and fire purchases that are being requested to be approved through Penny for Pasco. Number of vehicles on there, other large purchases that are have been vetted by staff, myself and finance director. Ultimately, we'd request your approval of the Penny for Pasco capital improvement plan budget. And again, we stand for your questions and inquiries.
May I say something, John?
Please.
Can't vote on anything at a workshop, okay? So you can't give a, what you can do is, if you're, whatever you decide regarding the CIP, you could say, look, I'd vote for that, and say how you'll vote. That's just fine, okay? At some point in time, I presume you'll have the budget. Whether you want to formally vote on a capital improvement plan, it's probably a good thing to have that. But today you just could say, yeah, I'm good with the way it is. In case you don't need any motions or anything. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
So how are we going to proceed then? Do you like to go through, would you all like to go through each of these items that way?
I mean, maybe we can start with police, go through police, and then go through fire, if that makes the most sense, and have our individual questions.
That's fine with me.
just so we're not bouncing back and forth.
Yep, all right. Then we'll start with the police and go to Mr. Casella.
Question I have is on the building maintenance side with the 6,000 for carpet and offices. I take it this is for just strictly the offices within the police department side?
Yes, that's correct.
And then on the firearms supplies, you're asking just for 2022, but then 23, 24, 25, 26, I guess later on down the road you would.
That's correct. We asked for this amount mainly because of the lack of shotguns on the road. And we have some that are antiquated. So what we're trying to do is for consistency, is get new shotguns so that they're all have the same operating systems. So one's not running a Remington, the other one's running a Mossberg, and the mechanisms are different safeties and things of that nature.
And how many shotguns are just out of curiosity you're looking at?
Looking at 15,
15?
and that doesn't include what we're going to trade in, so it may come down.
That's all.
You're projecting 3 cruisers over the course of the next 5 years within the plan. The assumptions that generate these values, is it based off of current lease agreements? Is that how you're coming to that projection?
It's off the state bid. Actually, it's the sheriff's office bid, which comes under about $2,000 or $3,000 from the state bid, and they went up in price from last year. It was $37,129 to $37,966 per vehicle. And the reason the cost is a little higher is because last year apparently there wasn't enough money budgeted for the installation costs and a couple of other items, so it had to come from another source in order to make the vehicles whole. So we're trying to alleviate that with one time.
So the intent is to purchase them outright versus financing them over the course of the 5 years? Is that the?
Yeah, that would be my, it's up to you.
If we're gonna do it out of penny for Pasco, yeah, cash is there.
Okay. There is no escalation over the course of the 5 years? You're intending to pay the same amount today as well as 5 years from now?
It's hard to determine what the cost increase is going to be. It went up from the year prior. It went up again this past year. We can anticipate it going up, but we don't know what that is going to be.
So we leave it at 0?
Yeah, well, I would suggest because we're gonna look at this every year, it's gonna be a rolling 5-year plan. If prices have gone up 20% next year, you'll see a different set of numbers there. But I do think it's appropriate to anticipate it's gonna be in that 180, 200 range over the next 5 years. Now, obviously, we get to 2023, we'll drop 22 off and we'll add 27 and put more accurate numbers in there.
On the boat, we have $100,000 allotted or budgeted for the boat, being that this may be the worst possible time to purchase a boat economically. Is the intent to purchase it in 2022? Because I just happen to know that boats are probably 30% more expensive now than they were 6 months ago or eight months ago. So is the intent to purchase it in the next fiscal year, or?
Yes.
Okay. What generated the $100,000 budget amount?
We've been looking at the cost of boats. I even made contact with my prior agency, and of course, they have larger resources. So we're trying to keep it somewhere where it's not such a. They're paying $181,000 for their new boat. We've seen a couple in the 90 range, but so we're trying to keep it cost effective, and we'd like to keep it under $100,000 if possible. But again, like you're saying, with the cost of boats rising, we wanted to just have a set number there.
That's all the questions I have.
Is this going to bring us up to date on the police cruisers? Is this the way we're rotating stuff in and out? Is that the plan?
Yes, that's correct.
This is the last of our brass heat cars that we're trying to replace this year.
It'd be 2 more.
There's 5, total 5 we need to replace.
Yeah, what I mean is 2 more years, because just in fact, this year, we've had to take $8,000 from another source just to keep up with the vehicles maintenance and keep them on the road that we still use for like the new hired deputies that we had, officers, excuse me. And if the reserve officer comes in, he'll need a vehicle. So we still have to maintain those older vehicles to, as spares and so on and so forth. And if we get new vehicles, they will come with a 5-year warranty on them. So theoretically, the maintenance cost should go down.
So are you planning on increasing the number of police officers we have also? And we have DPWs for those police officers, correct?
Correct. I wasn't planning on increasing the officers at this point in time. This is just to keep the ones that,
Old cars out.
right,
The really plan we should have had in place 20 years ago.
that's correct.
Okay. And the boat, is it as special and as fancy as the fire department has?
It won't be red, but,
It'll be blue?
yeah.
Okay.
It'll have the necessary equipment. That would include installation of the lighting packages and the radio package and radar and everything.
And all the good stuff?
Yes.
For $100,000. So we could replace the police boat when we still putting it down at Nick's Park, or we got another place, or you're just gonna have it on a trailer?
Well, what we're planning on doing is maintaining the old boat, just in case we have to take the new boat out for maintenance. We'd still have a boat available to do water service and patrols and things like that. So it's technically not a replacement, it's an addition, but that boat that we have right now it needs to be replaced. Little is the key word.
Yeah, okay. So where are we at in building maintenance, because, you have been making improvements to the police department back there, and I like what you've done, thank you very much. And I'm sure the police officers like what you've done. Do you have future plans for the maintenance back there?
At some point in time, we would look at expanding the concrete pad in the back with also the overhang. So we have some outside storage that is actually covered for over items that won't fit inside of our evidence and overflow evidence room.
Okay. Sounds like a wonderful plan.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Mayor, I do have another question. For the boat costs, is that the total sunk cost for this new boat? We don't have to then anticipate a new lift or anything else coming out in terms of?
No, we want to keep it larger, but it will be able to fit on the lift. We don't want to get it to where we'd have to make different arrangements for it or accommodations for it. So it can be bigger. It will take a 22-foot boat if that's what we can wind up with. It will still fit on that lift.
Okay. And in terms of our officers, we have adequate officers trained in whatever new boat comes along? There's no?
We have 2, the captain is trained in it, one of the other officers is trained in it, one of our reserve officers, the only reserve officer is trained in it, and we have a school coming up in October, and we're sending 2 people to that.
So there'll be a constant, the idea is to always keep someone on service who's able to run the boat? Is that the intent?
Yes, ideally is to have at least 1 or 2 on each squad, so that if we have the manpower available on the road, because that's the first priority, we would be able to send someone out that's capable of taking the boat out.
So, thank you.
I think that's great. Sounds like a plan.
If anybody has no more questions with the police, we'll move on to fire.
Do we need to open it to?
I was gonna do it when we got to the end.
Gotcha.
Mr. Kinsella, any questions on fire?
Question on the F-250. Looking, what you're planning on doing is getting rid of the current vehicle that you have, and of the two new ones, one of them is going to be more of a reserve vehicle.
Two new ones?
Correct.
No, the one would be my vehicle, the second one would be the brush truck, and the vehicle I'm currently in now would go to the reserve vehicle.
Okay, so we are keeping it as a reserve?
Yes.
Okay.
The other one's 20 years old, the other vehicle.
That's all.
So to the F-250s, we would have a full brush truck capable out, then your truck all the way through, and then the idea though, just, and again, I don't want to know, I'm just trying to think, the main pumper truck would be the day-to-day service, that's what everyone goes out on, then you would have that vehicle to supplement as needed, and then if someone starts a fire in the middle of the woods or something, that's the idea for the secondary brush truck.
Yeah, and it's multi-purpose, so it's not just that. It's also got the 4x4 ability, hold the boats, boat ramps to all the vehicles. It's for watering the medians, like you had mentioned before. This is the type of vehicle to do that because it can pump and roll. Where a fire truck, you have to stop, put it in, engage the pump, transfer the transmission, get out, pull the hose. This truck, you can put it in the pump and drive it around. So when the times that we have to water median, it's a much safer, more efficient process to do that. And then it's the high water, so it's not just, I hate to call it a brush truck because I don't want to deceive you with we're just going to fight brush fires with it. It's not that. It's a multi-purpose against all the things we just discussed.
You have roof repair, HVAC as a capital improvement to the station, I'm assuming. That's the only improvement foreseen within 5 years?
Well, new fire station.
I don't see that on.
So what's that? Yeah, we have the needs assessment that's coming up for that next year. And then there's a lot of things I want to do and a lot of things we need to do with the station. But at the end of the day, we want to dump the money into it and then our whole goal is to replace it. I know some of the things, if I remember right, some of the things if we were to do it, if we used Penny for Pasco, would tie us to 5 years, correct? Talk pretty loud, that's what I'm trying to
I think Rachel would have to help us more with this, but I do believe once we expend Penny for Pasco funds, we have to have that in use for the city for at least 5 years.
Yes, that's correct. The
Yeah.
expectancy has to be 5 years or greater.
So then you're anticipating being in the station for the next 5 years minimally?
I would hope not.
Then, once we paid 10 grand theoretically, you're stuck in the station for 5
For
years?
the repairs.
Yes.
So this was a conversation we were trying to figure out Penny for Pasco use for this particular item, and that's what we weren't sure about. That's what the process was originally. I want to say, wasn't that in general fund?
Originally, this was trying to be budgeted in general fund, but to try to move some of the expenditures out of the general fund, because of course we don't want to tax general fund again. It got brought about potentially putting it inside the Penny. Oh, so originally this was asked to be budgeted in the general fund line item, but once we spoke and sat down with the city manager stuff, we decided maybe we can move this to Penny for Pasco to not tax the general fund as much. But this is something that we have to do. What we would be doing with this is replacing an AC unit inside the gym that's currently a window unit. You know, just trying to upgrade it a little bit better with that side, and then the holes that are in the roof currently.
The concern I have is you are then stuck in that building for 5 years. I don't know if we want to reevaluate that specific line item.
I think that's worth reevaluating. If that's the rules we have to play by, I sure would not want to commit to you that would, or to the taxpayers, that we'd be in that building for 5 years. I truly hope we're not in that building for
And I know
5
there's
years.
an active looking for grants and looking for ways out
Yeah.
of that building,
I-
and to be tied to something as silly as that may be.
I think that's something we go back and reevaluate and make sure that we, and for 10 grand, we'll find another way to do it.
Now, here's, how does that work with that same logic and idea work with the station replacement assessment? Would that then fall to this existing station or the new station, if you were to exercise those funds?
Well, I think the life expectancy is typically for a capital asset. So the life expectancy is for a capital asset. So the assessment is not a capital asset, obviously. It's just somebody to come in and evaluate the space. And I mean, before we actually broke ground on a building, it would be a few years after the assessment, I would imagine anyway.
Okay. I just know sometimes, I know like a lot of times when I do construction, it has to be tied to the capital asset. So even if we do the study, the IRS requires you to tie it to a specific asset in order to.
Well, that would be for a new building with a life
Okay, so then it would be
expectancy
tied
of
to
greater
the
than
new
5
building.
years. Yes.
Okay. It would just roll over to the new building.
Yes.
The skid FF pump tank, that's for the new F-250 then, I'm presuming? Okay.
By making it a skid, it allows me to put it in either truck.
Okay.
We can move from one to the other.
And what the heck's a hail floating pump?
Exactly what it is. It's a pump that floats on the water.
Isn't that a boat?
What's that?
Isn't that a boat?
Not a boat. It's a boat. But it's a pump that floats on the water, so if we need to draft water out of the lake or the river, we can take that pump, set it in the water, and then, we currently have one, and it's 20 years old. Done us good, but it's 20 years old, so it's a replacement for that pump.
You just want one more boat than him.
So that's when he can buy in this pretty new boat, we can spray with 2 lines instead of just.
There you go.
That's a replacement for one we currently have, that's 20-something years old.
So it is a replacement of,
Yeah, and that's another multifaceted tool. We can use it for brush fires, we can take it out into the woods and put it in a pond in a lake, and just pump water out of the lake and fill the truck, instead of the truck coming out of the woods, going back into the woods. We use to draft water out of the rivers and supply trucks on shore.
okay, I'm good with it. I'm done, thank you.
I had some questions about some of the safety equipment you were thinking about getting. Our guys are, a lot of this, the heart monitor is a 12-lead heart monitor. Is it a self-reading 12 lead? Because our guys qualified to read 12 leads?
I am. They're not qualified to interpret a 12 lead, but there's a lot more to that monitor. It does.
Is it a self-teaching? I mean, does it tell you what you need to know?
It tells you what it's interpreting, yes.
That's like the AED?
Yeah. Yeah, this is a whole other level of AED.
That's what I'm saying. Our guys are not qualified for advanced life support, so.
They're not qualified to interpret what that monitor is reading, but what this gives us the capability of doing is, me and Captain Quinn were discussing, we have to step it up. We have to be the best service that we can be and provide the best service to the people that we can be. This monitor, so you picture the AED that we have, we can go out on the wall out there and I can grab the AED, and that's what I have in my truck, that's what they have in their truck.
Right.
This takes it up 3 notches. Not only is it an AED, it's a monitor that I can look at as a paramedic and interpret what it's saying and give that to the rescue. They can use it, they can't legally interpret what it says, but they can hit a button, transmit that.
Transmit it.
They can transmit it to the ER. It does automatic blood pressures, it does automatic pulse ox. It has,
Oh, I see the equipment, and I understand exactly what's on it. That's why I was wondering if we're gonna have to train our guys to handle this now.
there'll be a training, involved with it because it does more things, like when we're doing CPR on somebody, it tells you if you're being effective or you're being a little weak.
I know, they give us.
Yes, yeah.
But I'm just saying, I was just asking because I want our guys to have the training to take care of something this advanced, because this is up there with the advanced life support system stuff. And I understand that, and that's why I was saying, are our guys gonna get higher certifications, we're gonna move them up?
Let me put it to you this way, our medical director is ecstatic that we're trying to push us forward to catch up to where everybody surrounds us.
I have absolutely no qualms about it, because I know, time is muscle, time is life, everything, I understand it. I'm just saying, we're gonna have to think about getting these guys moved forward in their own abilities to handle this equipment. If we're going to give them this type of equipment, they need to know how to work it.
That's all part of it.
Okay,
All that, yeah.
but their training isn't part of
It's something we'll do in-house.
Yeah.
Talk to metal director and I can take care of that on my end of the permit.
I love having qualified personnel.
We got it.
I know you got this. And I'm thrilled, but I understand what this is, and I think this is wonderful. That's why I'm thinking, because right now, if we do have someone that has a heart problem, we still have to call Pasco County to transfer them, right?
Right.
And I was hoping we were moving on up.
Yeah, we still have to have them they are the ALS COP scan providers. They have the rescues and transport units, so they'll still be coming to the call. Everything that we do between A and they actually get there is just an enhancement to the service.
That's wonderful, but I would really like us to move on up.
Our goal is to be ALS, is to be advanced life support. Like if you were to look at it, if I were to take 100 fire stations that surround us and put 100 dots on a map, we would be probably one of the only red dots because we're still basic life support.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so our
That's
goal,
why I was
part of this
thinking-
purchase is one more step into us
In
getting
that
to that.
direction,
Yep, yep.
I have no objection. I think it's wonderful. But it seems like our fire equipment lasts 20 years. Everything, the trucks, the pumps,
That's a good thing.
I mean,
You typically don't find that.
yeah.
Good maintenance.
Yeah, and you're doing a great job with it. I can't take all the credit, I'm fairly new, so.
I'm just really happy that I'm seeing these improvements because when people have the right equipment to do the job correctly, it makes the work environment much better for everybody involved. And if you have the training and you know that being a member of Port Richey's fire department or police department is not a bad thing. We want these guys to look at that on their resume and be just as happy about it from the beginning. And I think that's been something we have not helped our people with. So I'm happy to see this. This is wonderful.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell. I did have one question. Again, probably like the body armor question, your bunker gear, I'm sure that just, does that date out and then you guys rotate that?
Yeah, it has a 10-year shelf life on it, whether it's used or not used, it's a 10-year shelf life.
So how many do you normally replace at a time? Is there a certain set, a certain amount? 6 sets. 6 at a time, you just rotate the 6.
So it doesn't get too incumbent cost-wise.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. I don't have any more questions. Mr. McCleary?
Yes. On the capital equipment request for the F-250s, you're showing a purchase, but then you put in for a lease agreement, or a finance agreement, I should say. Is the intent to finance these out, or?
We threw the option out there both ways. Tom was working on that for you guys to decide whichever way you guys wanted to go with it, but we wanted to have all the information for you. I know some places like lease, it's a lease purchase, I believe, right? Tom
Yeah.
was more involved with that actual thing.
So we
Give
didn't,
you both numbers to decide what.
we'll give you both numbers to work off of. The outright purchase would be right around $150,000 for both vehicles. And then the lease, as you can see, we talked to Enterprise, that's who Pasco County and the city of Newport currently is leasing vehicles through. And that's the options that they give us for lease options.
And on this on the purchase, I know when we did the police vehicles last year or whatever it was, that also included a warranty for the maintenance agreements and all that to reduce maintenance costs. Is that the intent with these, or will we?
So the maintenance agreements would be something in addition to that lease, but we did speak to Enterprise about it. And they said that we'd probably add about anywhere between $1,500 to $2,500 total onto the purchase of the lease option.
And is that the intent for your vehicles as well, is to wrap all of the maintenance into the overall purchase agreement?
Yes, that's the total cost for everything.
That's all my questions.
And these are a lease purchase as well, they're not turn-ins
The $150,000 would be to buy it outright.
outright?
Yeah, the lease, I think, which came in at like $30-something thousand a year.
$38,000 a year,
Yeah,
depending what option you choose, anywhere from 26 to 38.
Would be to buy them out at the end of the lease, but you would, and I think they said it's anywhere about a $5,000 to $6,000 buyout, because they give you negative equity inside positive equity inside the vehicle, because the intent of the lease with Enterprise is that they get you to resell your your vehicles, and not keep those vehicles. And I told them, well, that's up to our city council if they want to keep the vehicle or just lease the vehicle.
Just real quick, is this going is going to mean that every single vehicle we have in the police department and the fire department is going to have maintenance records, accurate maintenance records.
That's correct. I think you were already provided one a couple of sessions ago, and we have them color-coded actually, so
I'm
it's
just happy about that, because the one time that I requested all the maintenance records from the stack, they were this freaking high. And it was unbelievable, and it had no organization to it, and it was difficult to discern which vehicle it belonged to. So that's important that we have a record of that sort of thing, and that we can produce it upon request
correct.
easily instead of doing all that work. Thank you.
No? Gentlemen, do we have any other questions?
I have one more. On the lease financing proposal, it has a vendor to be decided.
So I actually just saw that, you have two different lease options, and you have Enterprise, and then you have Leasing 2. That's the company that we initially looked at to lease the new engine, the fire truck. That lease option means that you're kind of getting a loan to buy the vehicle. The Enterprise is a lease to own, where the leasing one is, hey, we're gonna own these vehicles at the end of that lease. We're gonna give you
So
100.
it's not a lease, it's a finance.
Yeah, it's a finance, yeah.
Okay.
It's called Leasing 2. It's kind of a financing option, like that's the company we were gonna use for the fire truck. So there's actually 3 different options: outright, the lease to own, which would be the financing, and then the Enterprise.
No more questions from council, we can go to Mr.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. Appreciate you going into a lot of detail here. I only have a couple comments. One, overall objective in working through a budget like this would be possibly to quantify and prioritize which items, maybe need to be priority. Also, wants versus needs. That goes in line with the priority list. What I'm seeing here, 3 cars a year for 5 years, that's 15 cars, plus the 6 we just got, right? So that's 21 cars. I don't know how many people you got, but there should be some kind of match there, and if that's appropriate, fine. But it looks like we got a plan to add 3 a year for the next 5 years, all right? On the boat, $100,000 investment to use 1 or 2 days a week versus a vehicle to use every single day. That vehicle is about 60,000, 100 grand for a boat. Maybe we need to look at adding a motor if there's some issue with the boat we have. The entire scope of the jurisdiction is in a no-wake zone. So we don't need to go very fast, although we can if the need arises. So essentially, maybe that can be addressed with a new motor and utilize the same function and potentially utilize those funds in better priority. I also noticed in this anticipated revenue, 450 goes for 3 years and then drops off to 0. Don't know if that's because Penny for Pasco goes away at that point in time. I don't know. Just an observation. But I appreciate the candidness and the information that you guys are providing. And hopefully you get your needs and not necessarily your wants. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Any more questions? No? Do we need to make any motions for this?
We have any motions, but what you say is, I guess either the finance director or Mr. Dude say, look, you want me to put this into the budget? These are numbers that are going to appear in your budget. You know what I mean? You got any problems with that? You got to count heads, and because that'll be in your budget. These will be revenue sources, petty. No, you can't vote, yeah. So So, you know, he's looking for direction. He's gonna bring himself to the vote on. Do you want him to do it? I guess, how to just each, it sounds like you all do, you know what I mean?
I think we're all in agreement
Yeah.
on this budget. Do you have a show?
The only hesitation I have is to the boat itself, possibly deferring that another year when pricing is more economical. I happen to have a neighbor who's a boat dealer, and he says you are easily paying 30% plus for a new boat. I think, you know, I don't disagree that we need one, but is there a way to defer that capital expenditure where pricing may be more efficient?
But as far as funding, we still keep it as a budget item and maybe defer it into.
And obviously, it would come back to you for approval once Chief and I say, we want that one. That would come back to you, and if the market's still 30, 40, 50% above, it's always your prerogative to say, no, let's wait 6 months. If we get to the end of the budget year, you know, we're not, and we don't have your approval, we're not buying a boat. So
Okay, and just for a clarification, it is, right now, as we're sitting and speaking here, the penny for Pasco, funding would likely disappear in 2024, is that correct?
It does expire, I believe, it's 10 years?
The current end date is 2024, that's
Okay.
why.
Yeah.
I know that they're in talks about continuing it, but we don't have anything finalized yet, so.
So we're doing the most conservative budgeting at this point,
Exactly,
and
to
it
show
may
you.
continue thereon, but
Yeah,
that
the
would take an
information we
act.
have now, yeah.
Yeah, this is the second 10-year period, right? Well, you wouldn't know, you weren't here, right?
Yeah, I
It was a
didn't.
very contentious thing 15 years ago, and it passed. And then I guess 5 or 6 years ago, it passed again, so it's a political issue.
Yeah, so we're up to the winds beyond us, and right now we're just being conservative with our funding.
right.
I'm going to jump back in. Questioning on the boat, this 100,000. It's not necessary for a brand-new boat, it's for a boat. In other words, if we get a surplus from another government agency, that money can be applied to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, right now it's a budget line item of $100,000,
So it could go anywhere.
it could go, if they can find a yacht for $100,000, he gets a yacht.
Anywhere you would approve. It'll come back to you. And you'll get to say yes or no.
All right, so you're a yay. Ms. McClary?
Yeah, I'll be a yay.
I'm a yay also.
If I could, Mr. Vice Mayor, I've got a couple of takeaways. We're going to look at the impact of the requirements. If we spend 10 grand on the fire station, does that tie our hands? We'll make sure the maintenance packages are wrapped into the purchase. And obviously, when we're ready to buy a truck or ready to buy a police car, if you want to see purchase versus lease purchase options, we'll bring that to you. I mean, this doesn't give staff permission to go buy a boat or a car or a truck. But it does give us an idea of what numbers to bring into the budget. Once that's approved, then we have the authority to spend it with your approval. So none of this is going out and buying anything today. It all comes back to you for your approval. But those were my takeaways from the discussion, and you'll see those when we bring the budget back to you.
One more quick question. The penny for Pasco does not limit the idea of a finance, correct? I mean, they look at it, whether you're financing over 3 years or you're purchasing outright.
I'm only smiling since we've already made that decision and started doing that with the 3 police cars. And
Okay.
That was the previous finance director's interpretation.
Okay, so
whether you finance it, that's what the decision was. I would think so, right?
It doesn't
Rachel,
specify in Penny for Pasco how to finance it or anything. It's just
How to
the
purchase it.
requirements are that it's for
Yeah.
police, fire, that it has a life expectancy over 5 years. That's it.
All right. And do we need a motion to adjourn?
No. Oh, it's adjourned.
Unless there's more questions?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.